Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the sky changed forever. He stood on the observation deck of Earth Defense Station Alpha, watching the blue planet spin slowly below. The year 2157 had brought humanity many wonders, but nothing could prepare them for what came next. The first sign was the birds. Every bird on Earth stopped singing at exactly 0800 hours. Jake noticed it because his wife Lisa had told him about it during their morning call. She worked as a scientist studying alien life forms that might exist beyond Earth. She said the silence felt wrong, like nature itself was holding its breath. Then the shadows came. Massive shapes blocked out the sun over New York, London, Tokyo, and 12 other major cities around the world. Jake grabbed his binoculars and looked up at the ships hanging in the sky like dark clouds. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built. Each ship stretched for miles, their hulls black as space itself. The communication systems across Earth went crazy. Every radio, television, and computer screen showed the same image. A tall creature with 4 arms and skin, like polished metal, appeared on every device. Its voice echoed in perfect English, then switched to Chinese, then Spanish, then every language humans spoke. "I am Supreme Commander Vexthel of the Zephyrian Empire," the creature said. "We represent 12 advanced species who have watched your primitive world for some time. You humans have become a threat to the peace of this galaxy. We offer you protection under our care." Jake felt his blood turn cold as the alien continued speaking. "You have 7 Earth days to surrender all weapons and technology. You will be relocated to safe areas where we can watch over you. If you refuse, we will remove the threat you pose to civilized worlds." This is not a negotiation. The screens went black, leaving humanity in stunned silence. Jake ran to the command center, where his fellow officers were already gathering. Captain Susan Wells was trying to contact Earth Command, but the signals kept getting blocked. "The aliens are jamming our communications," she said. "We can barely reach the surface." "What about our defense platforms?" Jake asked. Earth had built massive weapon stations around the planet, each one armed with nuclear missiles and energy cannons. They were supposed to protect humanity from any threat from space. The answer came too quickly. Jake watched through the station's main viewer as bright beams of light shot from the alien ships. The beams touched each defense platform for just a second, but that was enough. One by one, the mighty stations that had taken decades to build simply stopped working. Their lights went out, their weapons powered down, and they became nothing more than dead metal floating in space. "How is that possible?" Susan whispered. The defense platforms had shields that could stop nuclear bombs. They had armor made from the strongest materials humans could create. But the alien beams went through everything like it was paper. Back on Earth, Jake's wife Lisa was watching the same thing happen from her laboratory in Colorado. She worked with a team of scientists who studied space and the possibility of alien life. Now that aliens were actually here, their years of preparation felt useless. Lisa's boss, Dr. Ben Carter, was running between computer screens like a man possessed. "Look at these energy readings," he shouted to anyone who would listen. "The aliens are using some kind of space-bending technology. They're not just more advanced than us. They're using science we barely understand." But Lisa noticed something else in the data. The alien energy had patterns, like a heartbeat or a song. "Ben," she called out, "look at this frequency pattern. It's not random. There's a structure to it." Meanwhile, in underground bunkers around the world, military leaders were having emergency meetings. President Helen Walsh sat in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by generals and advisors who all looked lost. The most powerful military in human history had been made useless in less than an hour. "What are our options?" she asked. "General." Frank Cooper shook his head. "Madam President, our weapons can't even reach their ships." Our missiles explode before they get close. Our energy weapons bounce off their hulls like flashlights. Across the world, people reacted differently to the news. Some panicked and ran through the streets. Others stood on rooftops, staring up at the alien ships with wonder or fear. Many gathered in churches, temples, and mosques to pray. Children asked their parents what was happening, and the adults had no good answers to give. But not everyone was ready to give up. In Australia, a man named Danny White Wolf looked at the alien ships through an old telescope. He had served in the military for 20 years before becoming a guide in the outback. He knew how to track enemies and how to survive when things looked hopeless. In Tokyo, a young computer expert named Kevin Chun was already trying to break into the alien communication systems. He worked from a hidden room filled with computers, drinking energy drinks and typing code faster than most people could think. And in the secret facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Sandra Kim was activating emergency protocols she had hoped never to use. Her company had built artificial intelligence systems for the government, systems that could run the entire country if needed. As the first day ended, humanity faced a truth they had never imagined. They were not alone in the universe, and they were not the strongest species. The aliens saw them as nothing more than dangerous animals that needed to be caged. But the aliens had made one mistake. They thought humans would break easily when faced with impossible odds. They had never seen what humans could do when their backs were against the wall and they had nothing left to lose. 3 days had passed since the aliens delivered their ultimatum, and they decided to show humanity what would happen to those who resisted. Jake Morrison watched in horror from his crippled space station as beams of pure energy reached out from the alien ships like fingers of death. The International Space Station, humanity's greatest achievement in space, was the first target. The beam touched it for less than a second, and the station that had orbited Earth for over a century simply came apart. Not an explosion, not fire, just pieces floating away like someone had taken apart a toy. Next came the military satellites. One by one, the devices that helped armies communicate and guided missiles to their targets went silent. The aliens were not just attacking. They were making humanity blind and deaf in space. On Earth, people watched the destruction on their screens, and many lost hope. But Colonel Rick Hayes was not one of them. He had fought in wars on Mars and the Moon, places where surrender meant death. Now he sat in a bunker beneath Washington, D.C., making phone calls to people around the world. "Listen to me carefully," he said to each person he called. "The government might surrender, but we don't have to. Are you with me?" One by one, they said yes. Susan Wells from the space station, Danny White Wolf from Australia, Sandra Kim from her technology company, Kevin Chun from his computer room. In Tokyo, even Dr. Ben Carter and Lisa Morrison from their laboratory in Colorado. Sandra Kim had spent 20 years building computer systems that could think like humans. Now she put those systems to work in ways their creators never intended. Her artificial intelligence programs began setting up secret communication networks using quantum signals the aliens had not learned to detect. The beauty of quantum communication, she explained to the others during a coded video call, is that it works by connecting particles across any distance instantly. The aliens can jam our radio signals, but they cannot stop particles that are already connected. Meanwhile, Dr. Carter and his team worked day and night to understand the alien technology. They had collected pieces of destroyed satellites and space debris hit by the alien beams. Under powerful microscopes, they saw that the alien weapons did not destroy things the way human weapons did. It's like they convinced the atoms to stop being what they are, Dr. Carter told Lisa Morrison as they examined a piece of satellite hull. The metal doesn't melt or break. It just forgets how to be metal. Lisa Morrison studied the energy patterns they had recorded from the alien attacks. Her background in biology helped her see something the engineers missed. "Ben, look at this. Pattern. It's not just energy, it's information. The aliens are sending instructions to matter itself." In the Australian desert, Danny White Wolf was doing something the aliens never expected. While everyone else looked up at the ships in the sky, he was tracking footprints in the sand. The aliens had sent small teams to the surface to study human settlements, and Danny was one of the few people who could follow their trail. He moved through the red rocks and desert plants like a ghost, watching alien soldiers from hiding places they could not see. What he discovered changed everything. The aliens wore thick suits that covered their entire bodies, even in the mild desert air. They moved slowly and carefully, like people walking underwater. "They're not comfortable here," he reported to Colonel Hayes through Sandra's quantum network. "Whatever planet they come from, it's not like Earth. They're struggling with our air, our gravity, maybe even our sunlight." Kevin Chun made his own discovery while trying to break into the alien computer systems. The young hacker had been working for 72 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination. When he finally cracked a small part of their communication network, what he found almost made him fall out of his chair. The aliens were not conquerors. They were refugees. The files Kevin translated spoke of something called the Devourers, machines that ate entire solar systems. The Zephyrian Empire was running from these machines, looking for a place to hide and rebuild their strength. Earth was perfect for their needs because it sat at the crossing point of several cosmic energy streams. But there was more. The aliens needed Earth's resources so badly that they could not afford to see humans as equals. If they admitted that humans were intelligent, their plan to take Earth's resources would become impossible for their own moral codes. Colonel Hayes gathered this information and shared it with the resistance network that now spanned the globe. In hidden bunkers and secret bases, humans began to understand that they were not fighting invaders. They were fighting desperate refugees who saw no choice but to destroy humanity to save themselves. "This changes our strategy," Hayes told the group during an encrypted conference call. "They're not evil. They're scared. Scared people make mistakes." Dr. Carter and engineer Tony Blake had been working on a theory based on the energy patterns Lisa discovered. If the alien shields worked by sending information to matter, then maybe they could send different information back. "Think of it like this," Tony explained to the group. "Their shields are like a radio station broadcasting on a specific frequency. If we could broadcast on the same frequency, but with a different message, we might be able to confuse their equipment." The idea was dangerous and probably impossible. It would require connecting every power plant on Earth into one massive transmitter. The energy needed would drain the planet's electrical grid and leave billions of people without power for months, maybe years. But as the fourth day dawned and more alien ships appeared in Earth's sky, the resistance realized they might have no choice. The aliens were not just planning to remove humanity. They were preparing to strip mine the planet itself. Sandra, Kim's artificial intelligence systems detected massive energy buildups around the alien fleet. The computers calculated that the aliens were preparing to crack Earth's crust and extract materials from the planet's core. This would destroy the planet entirely. "We have maybe 3 days before they start the extraction process," Sandra reported. "After that, nothing we do will matter because there won't be an Earth left to save." President Walsh had been meeting with world leaders, trying to find a way to negotiate with the aliens. But every attempt at communication was ignored. The aliens had made their decision and saw no reason to discuss it with what they considered primitive animals. In her private office, surrounded by advisors who looked as tired as she felt, President Walsh faced the hardest decision in human history. Dr. Carter's plan might save Earth, but it would also destroy modern civilization. Billions of people would be thrown back into a pre-electrical age, struggling to survive without the technology they depended on. "Madam President," Colonel Hayes said during a secure call, "with respect, the choice is not between modern civilization and primitive living. The choice is between a chance to survive and certain extinction." As the resistance prepared for their desperate plan, Sub-Commander Thekmer of the Zephyrian Fleet studied reports from the surface teams. Unlike his superiors, he had begun to notice patterns in human behavior that troubled him. When faced with certain death, humans did not break or run. Instead, they worked together in ways his people had never seen. The sub-commander kept these observations to himself, knowing that questioning the Supreme Commander's assessment of humanity would be seen as weakness. But deep in his alien mind, he began to wonder if his people had made a terrible mistake about these strange creatures, called humans. 2 days remained before the alien deadline, and the truth Kevin Shun had discovered was spreading through the resistance network like wildfire. The Zephyrian Empire was not a group of conquerors, but a collection of refugee species running from something even worse than themselves. Dr. Lisa Morrison stood in her laboratory, staring at the quantum energy readings that painted a picture of desperation across the galaxy. The data Kevin had stolen from the alien networks told a story of entire star systems going dark, consumed by machines that turned planets into raw materials for their endless expansion. "The Devourers," she said to Dr. Carter as they analyzed the alien files. "According to this data, they've already consumed 40% of this galaxy. The Zephyrians have been running for over 200 years. Dr. Carter nodded grimly as he studied the technical specifications of the alien ships. "Look at these power readings. Their fleet is running on minimum energy to conserve fuel. They're not showing us their full strength because they don't have full strength to show." This revelation changed everything about humanity's situation. The aliens were not mighty conquerors, toying with a primitive species. They were desperate survivors who saw Earth as their last hope for escape, and they could not afford to let moral considerations stop them from taking what they needed. Colonel Hayes received this information in his command bunker and immediately understood its importance. If they're refugees, then they're making decisions based on fear and desperation, he told his team. That makes them dangerous, but it also makes them vulnerable to mistakes. The mistake came sooner than anyone expected. Hayes had been planning a raid on one of the alien ground installations, hoping to capture equipment or prisoners. What he found instead was an opportunity that could change the entire war, working with Navy SEAL Commander Lisa Park and her team. Hayes approached the alien facility, hidden in the mountains of Colorado. The installation was smaller than expected, guarded by only a few alien soldiers who moved slowly in their environmental suits. The raid itself was almost too easy. The aliens were so focused on their scientific equipment that they barely noticed the human soldiers until it was too late. Within minutes, Hayes and his team had captured the facility and taken 3 alien prisoners, including Sub-Commander Thekmer himself. Under interrogation, Thekmer revealed information that stunned the humans. The mighty alien fleet that had terrified Earth was operating at less than 30% power. Their weapons needed long cooling periods between shots. Most importantly, their ship's life support systems were struggling to keep the crews alive in Earth's solar system. "Your star burns differently than ours," Thekmer explained through the translation device. "Your electromagnetic field interferes with our biology. We cannot stay in this system for more than a few of your months without suffering permanent damage." Lisa Park, who was conducting the interrogation, pressed for more details. Why not just leave and find another planet? The aliens' forearms moved in what the humans learned was a gesture of despair. There are no other planets. The Devourers have consumed everything else in this region of space. Your world is the last viable system within range of our remaining fuel supplies. Meanwhile, Sandra Kim's artificial intelligence networks had detected something that made the situation even more urgent. The alien ships were not just preparing to remove humanity. They were setting up massive drilling equipment to extract exotic matter from Earth's core. According to these energy patterns, Sandra reported to the Resistance leadership, they plan to crack the planet open like an egg. They need the rare elements in Earth's core to power their escape from the Devourers. Dr. Carter and engineer Tony Blake had been working around the clock to perfect their planet-wide electromagnetic pulse weapon. The theory was sound, but the execution would be incredibly difficult. Every major power plant on Earth would need to overload simultaneously, creating a resonance effect that would disable the alien fleet. The timing has to be perfect, Tony explained to the group. If even one power plant fires too early or too late, the resonance effect won't work. We get one shot at this, and if we miss, we won't get another. The plan faced a major obstacle when alien forces detected the underground facility and launched an assault. Dr. Amy Rodriguez, Carter's second-in-command, was coordinating the weapons control systems when the attack began. Colonel Hayes and his team mounted a desperate defense of the facility, but the aliens had brought heavy weapons. The battle raged through the underground corridors as scientists and engineers worked frantically to complete their preparations. Amy Rodriguez was in the main control room, making final adjustments to the resonance calculations when an alien energy beam broke through the blast doors. The beam struck her directly, and she began to dissolve just like the space stations had days earlier. But Amy Rodriguez was not finished fighting. Even as her body began to come apart at the molecular level, she managed to input the final sequence into the computer system. With her last breath, she shouted the activation codes to Dr. Carter before the alien weapon completed its terrible work. Carter stared at the control panel where his friend and colleague had been standing moments before. Nothing remained of Amy Rodriguez except the equations she had died to complete. The numbers on the screen represented humanity's only hope of survival. Back in his cell, Sub-Commander Vecmer had been listening to the sounds of battle echoing through the facility. When the fighting stopped and human guards came to check on the prisoners, he asked a question that surprised them. The female who died, he said, she chose to complete her work instead of saving herself. Why would any being make such a choice? Lisa. Park, who was standing guard, looked at the alien with a mixture of anger and pity. Because that's what humans do. We sacrifice for each other, for our future, for our children. It's what makes us more than just intelligent animals. The alien fell silent, processing this information with the same intensity he would use to analyze a technical problem. In all his years of military service, Vecmer had never seen a soldier choose mission, completion over personal survival, when escape was possible. As the Resistance prepared for their final gambit, long-range sensors detected something that changed the entire equation. Dr. Carter, working with the quantum detection equipment Kevin Sean had built, picked up energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. The readings matched the descriptions in the stolen alien files perfectly. The Devourers had found Earth's location, and they were coming. How long do we have? Colonel Hayes asked. Dr. Carter ran the calculations twice before answering. Based on their approach speed and the energy patterns we're detecting, maybe 6 months, possibly less. The Resistance leadership gathered for an emergency meeting via Sandra's quantum network. The situation had become almost impossibly complex. They were preparing to fight aliens who were themselves running from an even greater threat. And now that threat was heading directly toward Earth. President Walsh, who had been briefed on all these developments, made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week earlier. She authorized Operation Last Stand, knowing it would destroy Earth's technological civilization, but might give humanity a chance to survive both the Zephyrians and whatever was coming behind them. Dr. Carter, she said during the encrypted call, You have full authorization to proceed with the resonance weapon. May God help us all. As the final day before the alien deadline dawned, resistance members around the world took their positions at power plants and communication centers. The plan required perfect coordination across multiple time zones and languages, with no room for error. Commander Vector, still held prisoner in the damaged facility, found himself in an unprecedented situation. For the first time in his military career, he was hoping that his own forces would be defeated. The humans' desperate plan might be the only thing that could save both species from the approaching devourers. But first, humanity would have to prove that the Zephyrian Empire had made a fatal error in judgment. They had underestimated not just human technology or intelligence, but something far more dangerous: the human refusal to surrender when everything they loved was at stake. 18 hours remained until the Zephyrian deadline, and President Helen Walsh stood in the Oval Office, making the hardest decision in human history. Outside her windows, she could see people in the streets looking up at the alien ships that hung over Washington like storm clouds. "Madam President," General Frank Cooper said, "if we activate Dr. Carter's weapon, we'll destroy our own power grid. Billions of people will be without electricity, maybe for years. Hospitals, food distribution, transportation, everything will collapse." Walsh looked at the reports scattered across her desk. The alien drilling equipment was already being deployed above major cities. In 6 hours, they would begin cracking Earth's crust to extract the exotic matter they needed. After that, the planet would be uninhabitable. "General," she said quietly, "if we don't try this, there won't be any people left to worry about electricity." She picked up the red phone that connected her directly to military commanders around the world. "This is President Walsh. Authorization code Alpha 77. Operation Last Stand is now active. All units proceed to final positions." Across the globe, resistance members moved to their assigned locations. At the Hoover Dam, engineer Tony Blake connected the alien technology they had captured to the massive generators. In France, a team of scientists led by Dr. Marie Dubois prepared the nuclear power plants for controlled overload. Similar teams worked at power facilities on every continent. Captain Jake Morrison strapped himself into the cockpit of a fighter jet that had been hastily modified with captured alien technology. The weapons were crude and unreliable, but they were the only ones that might penetrate alien shields. Around him, 49 other pilots prepared for what everyone knew would be a suicide mission. "Remember," Morrison told his squadron over the radio, "we don't need to destroy their ships. We just need to keep them busy long enough for the ground team to activate the weapon. Every second we buy could mean the difference between success and failure." His wife Lisa was at the Resistance Command Center, monitoring the alien communication networks Kevin Shun had infiltrated. "Jake," she said over their private channel, "the Zephyrians are preparing for their final ultimatum broadcast. They think we're going to surrender." "Then they're in for a surprise," Jake replied, checking his weapons one last time. In his underground prison, Sub-Commander Vector listened to the preparations with growing amazement. The humans were about to destroy their own civilization to prevent the aliens from destroying their planet. It was a level of sacrifice his people had never contemplated. "Why are you doing this?" he asked Lisa Park, who was standing guard. "Your species could surrender and live under our protection. Many of you would survive." Lisa looked at the alien with contempt. "Survive as what? Pets? Zoo animals? You don't understand the first thing about humanity if you think we'd choose that." Meanwhile, Kevin Shun had achieved something unprecedented. Working from his hidden computer center in Tokyo, he had managed to upload a virus into the main Zephyrian computer network. The virus would not destroy their systems, but it would create confusion and delays at the critical moment. "The virus is in place," he reported to Colonel Hayes. When the shooting starts, their communication systems will experience random failures for about 20 minutes. It's not much, but it might give us an edge. Danny White Wolf had spent the past week moving through the wilderness areas where alien ground teams were operating. His guerrilla attacks had been small but effective, destroying survey equipment and forcing the aliens to divert resources to protect their operations. Now he crouched in the hills above Los Angeles, watching alien ships position themselves over the city. His job was to coordinate with resistance cells in urban areas, marking targets for the fighter squadrons that would soon fill the sky. Dr. Carter stood in the rebuilt control room of his facility, staring at the console where Amy Rodriguez had died to save humanity. Her final calculations glowed on the screen, equations that represented the planet's last hope. "Amy," he whispered to the empty air, "I hope you are right about this." Sandra Kim's artificial intelligence systems were running final checks on the global power network. The coordination required was staggering, with power plants across 12 time zones, all needing to overload in precise sequence. "All stations report ready," she announced to the command network. "The AI systems show green lights across the board. We have one shot at this, people. Let's make it count." As the deadline approached, Supreme Commander Vexthel prepared to deliver humanity's final ultimatum. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the blue and green world that held salvation for his people. The humans' silence over the past week had convinced him they would surrender rather than face extinction. He was wrong. At exactly 1200 hours Greenwich Mean Time, Jake Morrison's fighter squadron launched from hidden bases around the world. They, modified jets, screamed into the sky, their alien hybrid weapons charging for the first shots of humanity's last battle. The Zephyrian ships detected the attack immediately, but Kevin Chan's virus chose that moment to activate. Communication systems flickered and failed as the alien fleet struggled to coordinate their response. For precious minutes, the most advanced civilization in the galaxy was reduced to individual ships, fighting without proper coordination. Morrison's jet was the first to engage the enemy flagship. His weapons were crude compared to alien technology, but they were designed by desperate humans who understood that sometimes brute force matters more than elegance. The energy blasts that struck the alien hull were not sophisticated, but they were powerful enough to overload sections of the ship's shields. "All squadrons, this is Morrison," he broadcast to his pilots. "Hit them hard and keep moving. Don't try to be heroes. Just buy time for the ground team." The battle was spectacular and terrible. Human jets darted between massive alien vessels, like insects attacking giants. Most of the human weapons had no effect on the alien armor, but a few managed to find weak spots where the shields were already strained by operating in Earth's electromagnetic field. The aliens responded with their devastating beam weapons, but the long cooling periods Vecmer had revealed meant they could not fire continuously. Human pilots learned to attack immediately after each alien shot, using the enemy's own limitations against them. On the ground, power plants began the overload sequence. The process was carefully timed, starting with facilities on the Pacific coast and moving westward as Earth's rotation brought each time zone into alignment. The first sign that the plan was working came from Australia, where massive aurora displays began lighting up the daytime sky. The planet's electromagnetic field was responding to the coordinated power surges, creating a resonance effect that grew stronger with each additional power plant that joined the sequence. But the cost was immediate and devastating. As each power plant overloaded and shut down, entire regions went dark. Cities that had been illuminated for over a century suddenly lost all electrical power. Hospitals switched to emergency generators, knowing they had only hours of backup power remaining. In space, the alien ships began to experience system failures as Earth's electromagnetic pulse grew stronger. Their precisely tuned technology, designed for the stable energy environment of deep space, could not adapt to the chaotic electromagnetic storm the humans had created. Jake Morrison saw his chance when the alien flagship's shields flickered and failed. His jet was damaged and losing power, but he had one more attack left in him. Instead of firing his remaining weapons, he made a decision that would have made Amy Rodriguez proud. He aimed his fighter directly at the alien ship's command section and pushed his engines to maximum power. The impact was visible from the ground as Morrison's jet struck the flagship like a meteor. The explosion was not large by space battle standards, but it accomplished something no human weapon had managed. It damaged the alien command ship badly enough to send it falling toward Earth's surface dot as the resonance weapon reached full power. And alien ships began crashing from the sky. Dr. Carter activated the final sequence Amy Rodriguez had died to complete. The planet itself became a massive electromagnetic cannon, firing a pulse that would be visible from other star systems. The victory came at a price humanity was only beginning to understand. Modern civilization was ending, but something new was beginning. And in the wreckage of both human and alien technology, the seeds of an alliance were being planted that neither species could have imagined. The resonance weapon fired at exactly 1400 hours, and the sky exploded with light. Dr. Carter watched from his underground facility as every screen showed the same impossible sight. Aurora displays covering the entire planet, turning day into a rainbow of colors that had never been seen before. The electromagnetic pulse that erupted from Earth was unlike anything in recorded history. The planet's entire electrical grid had become a single massive antenna, broadcasting a signal so powerful it could be detected from neighboring star systems. The energy wave rolled across the globe in seconds, and wherever it passed, alien ships began to fall from the sky. Captain Jake Morrison's sacrifice had not been in vain. His fighter jet's impact on the alien flagship had damaged critical systems at the worst possible moment. As the electromagnetic pulse hit the massive ship, its failing shields could not protect it from the energy storm humanity had unleashed. Supreme Commander Vexthel felt his ship shuddering as system after system failed around him. The bridge. Lights flickered and died as the vessel that had crossed half the galaxy began its final descent toward the planet below. Impossible, he whispered in his own language. How could primitives create such a weapon? His subordinates scrambled to restore power, but it was too late. The ship that had terrorized Earth was now falling toward the surface like a burning mountain. Vexthel had just enough time to realize that his people had made a terrible mistake. About these creatures called humans, the electromagnetic pulse that saved humanity also destroyed it. Across the globe, every electrical device stopped working. Cars died on highways, planes fell from the sky, and the lights went out in cities that had never known darkness. The price of victory was the end of the modern world. Lisa Morrison stood in the command bunker, watching communication systems fail one by one as the pulse spread across the planet. The last message she received was from her husband's wingman, reporting that Jake had rammed the alien flagship and was gone. She stared at the dead screen, feeling a grief so deep it threatened to crush her. Jake had died to save humanity, but humanity as they knew it was ending too. The electromagnetic pulse that disabled the alien fleet had also destroyed every computer, every power plant, every piece of technology that modern civilization depended on. Colonel Hayes tried to maintain communication with his scattered forces, but the quantum networks Sandra Kim had built were failing as the pulse overloaded even the most hardened systems. For the first time in over a century, Earth was truly silent, but humans are nothing if not adaptable. Within hours of the pulse, people began emerging from their homes and shelters to help their neighbors. Emergency services worked by flashlight and radio when they could find working equipment. Communities that had been strangers the day before became families united by shared crisis dot in the mountains of Colorado. The resistance facility had been partially shielded from the pulse by its underground location. Dr. Carter and his team had power for a few more hours, long enough to assess what they had accomplished. Long-range sensors show at least 40 alien ships down, reported Tony Blake, reading from instruments that flickered and sparked. The rest are in various stages of system failure. I think we actually did it. Sub-Commander Thekmer, still imprisoned in the damaged facility, had felt his people's defeat through the electromagnetic chaos that filled the air. When Lisa Park came to check on the prisoners, she found the alien sitting quietly in his cell. His forearms moving in the gesture she had learned meant deep thought. "Your species has won," he said without being asked. "But at what cost? Your entire technological civilization is gone." Lisa looked at him with eyes still red from crying for her lost husband. Better to die free than live as slaves. That's something your people never understood about us. But Thekmer had been thinking about more than military defeat. During his captivity, he had observed human behavior in ways that challenged everything his species believed about primitive life forms. The sacrifice Amy Rodriguez had made, Jake Morrison's suicide attack, the willingness of an entire planet to destroy its own infrastructure rather than surrender these, were not the actions of mere animals. "I need to speak with your leaders," he said. "There are things you must know about what is coming." Meanwhile, Kevin Chun was discovering that his computer systems, buried deep beneath Tokyo and hardened against electromagnetic attack, had survived the pulse. His screens flickered with data from the few satellites that were still functioning, and what he saw made his blood turn cold. The long-range sensors showed new contacts at the edge of the solar system. The electromagnetic pulse that had saved Earth from the Zephyrians had also announced humanity's location to every intelligence within 50 light years. The Devourers were coming, working with equipment that sparked and threatened to fail at any moment. Kevin managed to establish contact with Dr. Carter's facility. The news he brought was worse than anyone had imagined. "The pulse we fired was visible across half the galaxy," Kevin reported through the crackling communication link. "The Devourers detected it and changed course. They'll be here in less than 3 months." Dr. Carter stared at the readings Kevin transmitted. The machine intelligence that had driven the Zephyrians from their homes was heading directly toward Earth, drawn by the massive energy signature of humanity's desperate weapon. "How many?" Carter asked. Kevin's voice was barely audible through the static. "Based on the mass readings, at least 1,000 ships. Maybe more. They're bigger than anything the Zephyrians had." As this information spread through the surviving communication networks, humanity faced a new crisis. They had defeated one enemy, only to attract something far worse. The electromagnetic pulse that had disabled the alien fleet had also left Earth defenseless against what was coming next. But Sub-Commander Thekmer had been studying human behavior for days, and he had reached a conclusion that would have shocked his superiors. When Lisa Park brought him before the human leaders for questioning, he made an offer that no one expected. "My people were wrong about yours," he said, his translated words echoing in the damaged command center. "We thought you were primitive, because your technology was inferior. We never considered that primitiveness and intelligence are not the same thing." Colonel Hayes, acting as interrogator, was suspicious. "What are you suggesting?" Thekmer's forearms moved in a gesture of respect that none of the humans recognized. "The Devourers will arrive soon. Neither of our species can defeat them alone. But together, combining your adaptability with our technology, we might have a chance." Dr. Carter looked up from his damaged instruments. "You're talking about an alliance between our species." "I am talking about survival," Vecmar replied. The Devourers do not distinguish between advanced and primitive civilizations. They consume everything. Your electromagnetic weapon proved that humans can think in ways my people cannot. We need that kind of thinking if we are going to live through what is coming. The proposal was unprecedented. Less than 24 hours earlier, the two species had been at war. Now a Zephyrian military officer was suggesting they become allies against a threat that could destroy them both. President Walsh, speaking through one of the few working communication links, made a decision that would reshape the future of both species. Sub-Commander, if your people are willing to help us rebuild our defenses and share your technology, we're willing to listen. As the first day after the electromagnetic pulse ended, humans and aliens began the slow process of learning to work together. The cities were dark, the power grids were destroyed, and an enemy beyond imagination was heading toward Earth. But humanity had done something the aliens thought impossible. They had turned certain defeat into unexpected victory through sheer determination and sacrifice. Now they would have to do it again, not as a single species fighting alone, but as part of an alliance that neither side had ever imagined possible. The Devourers were coming, but they would find Earth defended by something new, the combined will to survive of two species who had learned to see beyond their differences. 3 months had passed since the electromagnetic pulse that saved and destroyed human civilization in the same moment. Lisa Morrison stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt United Nations building, watching construction crews work by sunlight and firelight to repair the damage from humanity's desperate gambit. The world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Without electricity, without modern transportation, without the technology that had connected the globe for over a century, humanity had been forced to rediscover what it meant to be human. And in that rediscovery, they had found something the aliens never expected. They had become stronger. Communities that had been strangers before the crisis now worked together like extended families. People who had never grown their own food learned to farm. Engineers who had spent their careers designing computer systems now built water wheels and windmills. Children who had never seen the night sky clearly were learning to navigate by the stars. Sub-Commander Vecmar, no longer a prisoner, but not quite an ally, walked through the human settlements with wonder that his species' translators could barely express. The Zephyrians had assumed that destroying human technology would reduce them to helpless primitives. Instead, it had revealed the core strength that made humanity dangerous, their ability to adapt to anything. Your people do not behave like any species we have studied, he told Dr. Carter as they worked together in the rebuilt laboratory. When faced with impossible challenges, most civilizations either advance through technology or collapse. Humans seem to advance through stubbornness. Dr. Carter smiled grimly as he examined a piece of Zephyrian technology that Vecmar had helped him understand. We call it something else, but stubbornness works too. The alliance between humans and the surviving Zephyrians had not been easy. Many humans still saw the aliens as invaders who had tried to destroy their world. Many Zephyrians still believed humans were too primitive to be useful allies. But necessity had forced both species to work together. Colonel Hayes, now leading the global reconstruction effort, had established joint human-alien teams in every major population center. The Zephyrians provided advanced technology and scientific knowledge. The humans provided something the aliens had never learned, the ability to make things work with whatever materials were available. Sandra Kim's artificial intelligence systems, running on power generated by water wheels and solar panels built from salvaged materials, coordinated the rebuilding effort across the planet. Her computers were crude compared to what had existed before the pulse, but they were hardened against electromagnetic attack and built to last for decades without maintenance. We're not trying to rebuild the old world, she explained to a gathering of human and alien engineers. We're building something better, something that can survive whatever the universe throws at us. Kevin Chun had become an unlikely ambassador between the species. His ability to break into computer systems had evolved into an ability to break through communication barriers. Working with Zephyrian linguists, he had created translation programs that helped both species understand not just each other's words, but their thoughts and motivations. The young hacker had also made a disturbing discovery while analyzing the data from long-range sensors. The Devourers were not just coming to Earth, they were coming with purpose. The electromagnetic pulse had not only announced humanity's location, it had shown the machines something they found interesting. The pulse contained information, Kevin explained to the Joint Human-Alien Leadership Council. Not just energy, but data about how we use the planet's electromagnetic field as a weapon. The Devourers had never seen anything like it before. Danny White Wolf had become the liaison between the joint forces and the scattered communities around the world. His knowledge of tracking and survival made him invaluable in the new world where modern transportation no longer existed. More importantly, his understanding of both human and alien psychology had made him a bridge between two very different ways of thinking. The Zephyrians think in terms of efficiency and logic, he told Colonel Hayes during one of their planning sessions. Humans think in terms of survival and adaptation. We need to find a way to combine both approaches if we're going to have any chance against the Devourers. Dr. Lisa Morrison had thrown herself into the work of understanding alien biology, driven by grief for her lost husband and determination to make his sacrifice meaningful. Working with Zephyrian scientists, she had made breakthrough discoveries about how the two species could work together in ways neither had imagined. Human intuition and alien logic complement each other perfectly, she reported to the council. Our brains work differently, but when we collaborate, we can solve problems that neither species could handle alone. The proof of this collaboration was taking shape in orbital shipyards that combined human determination with alien technology. The new ships being built were unlike anything either species had created before. They were part Zephyrian science, part human engineering, and part something entirely new. Tony Blake, working with alien engineers, had designed vessels that could operate effectively even if their main systems failed. We learned from the electromagnetic pulse, he explained. These ships can function with or without advanced technology. If the computers fail, humans can fly them manually. If the power systems fail, they can run on backup systems that would make a Zephyrian engineer cry. But the greatest change was not in technology, but in perspective. President Walsh, addressing the first joint Human Zephyrian Council, spoke words that would have been impossible to imagine 6 months earlier. We are no longer two separate species sharing one planet, she said. We are one people preparing to face a threat that endangers all life in this galaxy. The Devourers see no difference between human and Zephyrian. Neither should we. Sub-Commander Thekmer, now holding the rank of Admiral in the Joint Fleet, had undergone his own transformation. The alien who had once dismissed humans as primitive. Animals now understood that primitiveness and savagery were not the same thing. Humans were primitive in their technology, but advanced in their spirit. As the final preparations for the Devourer arrival continued, long-range sensors detected the enemy fleet at the edge of the solar system. The machine intelligence that had consumed half the galaxy was finally here, drawn by humanity's electromagnetic beacon, like moths to a flame. But what the Devourers found was not the primitive world they expected. The planet that had sent such an intriguing signal was now defended by something unprecedented, a fusion of human adaptability and alien technology, guided by the combined wisdom of two species who had learned to see beyond their differences. New defense fleet that rose from Earth to meet the Devourer threat was small compared to the enemy armada, but it carried something the machines had never encountered before. Every ship was crewed by both humans and Zephyrians working together, their different ways of thinking combining into something greater than either species could achieve alone. Admiral Lisa Morrison, the first human to hold Joint Fleet Command, stood on the bridge of the flagship as the enemy approached. Around her, human and alien crew members worked side by side at stations designed for both species. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," she broadcast to the Joint Fleet. "6 months ago, we were enemies preparing to destroy each other. Today, we stand together against a threat that would consume everything we hold dear. The Devourers think. They understand us because they detected our electromagnetic pulse. They're about to learn that humans and Zephyrians together are capable of things neither species could imagine alone." As the two fleets closed the distance between them, a message was broadcast from the enemy ships. The mechanical voice spoke in perfect English and perfect Zephyrian, translated by computer systems that had analyzed the electromagnetic pulse. "Biological entities of the third planet, you have demonstrated energy manipulation capabilities that require study. Surrender your technology for analysis, and your species will be preserved in containment facilities." Admiral Morrison looked around the bridge at her mixed crew of humans and aliens, all of them volunteers who had chosen to face the unknown rather than live in fear. "Devourer Fleet, this is Earth Defense Command," she replied. "We have a counter-offer. Leave our system now, and we won't show you what happens when two species who refuse to surrender to each other decide to work together against a common enemy." The battle that followed would be remembered by both species as the moment they truly became one people. The Devourers had expected to face either primitive humans or desperate Zephyrian refugees. Instead, they encountered something new, a hybrid civilization that combined the best traits of both species and was stronger than either could have been alone. President Walsh's final address to the Joint Council, delivered after the Devourer Fleet had been defeated and driven from the solar system, captured the transformation both species had undergone. "They underestimated our will to survive," she said, looking out at an audience of humans and aliens who no longer saw themselves as separate species. All of them did. The Zephyrians underestimated humanity's refusal to surrender. The Devourers underestimated what we could become when we worked together. But most importantly, we underestimated ourselves. We thought Sue